Okay, so there's to reset the picture. Remember, Jesus has gone to the festival. We're not sure which festival. We talked about which one it could possibly be. And he basically had healed this guy and said, pick up your mattress and walk all around, peripado. And he did. And so this guy didn't know that it was Jesus that healed him. And Jesus came and identified himself in the temple courts. So he's in the courts, part of the court of Gentiles. I showed you a picture, a map of that. And the guy, Jesus says, it's me. I was the one who healed you. And the guy tattletaled to the authorities. And so you have the Sadducees and the Pharisees and all the leaders. And they are now asking Jesus questions. Jesus is talking to him. And so I won't go back over all the stuff because we've looked at the verses. But as I told you before, John gives us these situations where we have a sign, we have a miracle, and then we get an explanation. And it's all logos to telos. So it's a logical argument to a unstated telos generally. But sometimes John throws us a bone. He gives us a telos, which is really awesome. And in this case, I told you, this is what we call modern literature. This is why C.S. Lewis said that the Gospels are the first evidence of modern literature in the world. In modern literature, you have narrative and you have dialogue. And the dialogue is what John is using to produce or to give you the logos, and in many cases gives you the telos. But that's what we do. We don't tell, we show. You show and you don't tell in modern literature. And that's what he does, is uses dialogue to tell us the mind of Christ. Now, that doesn't mean that this is made up. However, we notice many times whenever it says that he made a logical argument, or when it says Korinthe, or krinos, when it says that he concluded for himself, it means that we might put it in quotes, which is incorrect. It was probably an extended argument, and that's what we're getting. We're getting the outline or the main points of this extended logical argument that Jesus is giving to the leaders and to the people. Many times, and these are, what do you call it, codes, not code words, but they're the things that we don't get out of our translations. Because our translation says, when it says Lego or logos, it says, oh, he said. No, it's only he said if it says epin. Epin, he said, they said. But if it says it's a logos or a Lego or a logos, that means it was a logical argument, and we're getting the boiled down, condensed version of that. And when it says Corinthus, when it says he concluded for himself, we translate that as he answered. Well, it wasn't just he answered and flippantly said something. He basically thought about it, and many times probably made an extended harangue, unless it said he concluded for himself and he said. But we'll see that. We see this all the time. As I mentioned before, they cut this wrong, or they cut these verses wrong. Remember, the verses were added, their verses themselves were parsed and added around 800 AD, about. And maybe even later than that, maybe around 1000 to 1200 AD. Because the very first thing they did is they broke it into the chapters. And then after they broke it into chapters, they broke it into paragraphs. And then they broke it into versification. They did it to make, one of the reasons that they did it, and by the way, the Old Testament was done by the Masoretes. Any idea? I think I've told you before, but I'll let you extra credit, right? Why did the Masoretes, that is the Jewish translators, the ones who added in about 800 AD, the vowel pointlets, why do you think they wanted to versify and put chapters into the Old Testament documents? Any idea?
Because the language was being lost.
Well, that's one of the reasons they put, as a matter of fact, Hebrew is dead. Hebrew was a dead language until the Masoretes reinvigorated. One of the reasons we don't know how to even pronounce Yahweh or the name of God is because we don't know if the vowel sounds are correct. The Masoretes took the Aramaic or the Arabic sounds for the vowels and applied them to the Hebrew text. And that's one of the reasons you get, in the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Reed Sea versus the Red Sea, and the long sleeve coat versus the coat of many colors. That's why there are problems between them. It was a long sleeve coat. It was not a coat of many colors. It was the Reed Sea, not the Red Sea. But we know that now because the Masoretes got the wrong vowels. But when we looked at the Dead Sea Scrolls, we didn't have the vowels, but we had the words, the original words, and we're able to put them together. But the reason the Masoretes wanted to diversify and they wanted to originally put in the chapters is because they were having serious problems with Islam. The problem with Islam is the Islamic scholars they hadn't fully versified, but Islam had already begun to have modern writing. In modern writing, you put spaces between the words, you begin to put in punctuation, you begin to put in versification, and you're able to begin to read if I give you an Islamic document, you can actually read it, where you can't read Greek very easily. You have to parse it because all the words run together. There's no punctuation, there's no separation. And the problem that the Masoretes were having, especially with Islam, is the Islamic scholars could look at their documents and know where to find in them if they wanted to quote chapter and verse, you didn't have to have it memorized. You could just go to chapter and verse, pretty much. And so both the Masoretes and the Christians began versification process as a response to Islam, because that allowed them to find things in the documents. The Jews followed the Christians because the Christians started beating them out, right? If you memorize all the books in the Bible and you know how to find a verse, right? You got lots of power. You don't have to memorize the whole thing. You just know where you're going, right? And so this became an evident thing that was kind of a fighting between the three groups. An arms, a competition, an arms race, a literature race of punctuation and versification, so that they could make it easier to find things that they wanted to find. If I just give you a text, right, that has no delineation, how hard is it to find something in that? Very difficult, right? You have to have it memorized to know what you're looking for. But if you begin to separate stuff with punctuation and words, now I don't have to memorize it. I just need to find where I'm looking for, right? So that's how we got versification. But if you notice, many times, often they break it at the wrong point. And in this case, they did, because here's a previous verse, 5:28. I don't like to call them verse, I like to call them statement. Here's a previous statement. Want to know this, because the time is coming in which everyone within the stones marking a tomb will hear of his tone. And then the next one, here's the NIV, and come out. Those who have done what is good will rise to live, and those who have done what is evil will rise to be condemned. Here's the Greek, and then the King James. And it shall come forth, they that have done good. See that they broke this. Usually they try to keep it a single sentence or a statement, right? But they broke it in the middle of a sentence. And shall come forth, they that have done good into the resurrection of life, and they that have done evil into the resurrection of damnation. And then the translation, I guess you should go through the translation a little bit here. And they will make to go forth to take a particular passageway. This is an interesting word. We haven't seen this word before in John, and it's not very common in the Gospels. Ekporosante. They will make to go forth out from take a particular passageway. The agatha. Agatha is good in Greek. What scientists haven't made or done, this is a common word we see all the time, to or into anastasis, a standing up again of life. This is a very interesting compound or statement, because usually we get anastasin, eknekros, or ekstasin eknekros, right? Eknekros, to stand up from death. This says standing up, zois, of life. Very interesting. But the worthless, Rex, is having practiced to or within anastasin, a standing up again of decision. Here's the translation. And they, the tones, will make go forth from death. Those having done good into a standing up again of life, and those having practiced worthlessness into a standing up again of decision. And that goes back to what we talked about in Krinos. I want to make this statement or make it very clear to you. You know, we see that Jesus, and we'll see it even more as we move through John, that Jesus makes his statement, for example, those who believe in my word will not see death. And we, in the Greek is concrete, so they mean it concretely. What do you think? You know, obviously people die. And people died even in Jesus' time. But yet Jesus was able to make this statement that you will not see death. What do you think? I'll give you a hint. The question is, what do you think he meant by that? But I think it's obvious. Remember chapter 3 in Nicodemus. What do you think Jesus was talking about when he said, you will not see death?
Spiritual.
Yeah, the spiritual, because what did the Sadducees think would happen to you when you died? That's it. There's nothing. What did the Pharisees think? Of your body, right? A physical resurrection of your body into the new Eden or whatever. They didn't even have an idea. They didn't even write it down. They just hoped, right? But yet Jesus told Nicodemus, and Jesus taught this idea of sarx, suke, and pneuma. Pneuma meaning you have life because you have a spirit, a soul, and that soul continues to live. And therefore, Jesus is saying and declaring that if you believe, if you trust in me, if you're convinced of me, that soul will continue. It won't end.
So are you saying that the Pharisees believed in, like, you would die and, like, you're dead then, and then later come alive? Like,
yes.
But then Jesus is saying, no, you live that whole time.
Yes.
Like you don't die at all.
Precisely. And see this, there are very strong theological things within this, and I'm not going to get into theology, but you can think about it for yourself. Remember, theology is what you do at home. You take the ideas home and you think about it. This is good for your brain. But if you think about this, is an interesting idea, because Jesus gives us the knowledge or the impression to Nicodemus that who has a soul? Everybody has a soul. And in this verse right here, it says, you know, and this probably made the Pharisees happy, right? A standing up again of life. But then he says that those who have been hollow, worthless, having practiced worthlessness, into a standing up again of decision. Now, we know that, and we'll find out later, but we know who's been given the power of decision on the world? Jesus has been given the power of decision. And he's God. And this is a beautiful irony, or it's a beautiful irony. Jesus is saying, I'm God, and God has given me the power of decision. As a matter of fact, in the very beginning of John, who made the heavens and the earth? Jesus. He was the Amar. He is the word of creation according to the Old Testament, that made everything. In other words, whose decision was it? Well, all together, right? God all together. But Jesus is the guy, right? And well, I guess I'll go back and I'll make the point. You know, if Jesus is the strong force of the universe, is holding the universe together, then guess what? Every single atomic motion is dependent on the decision of Christ. It's really interesting. Remember our favorite, Albert Einstein, right? Einstein said he didn't like his own ideas of probability. Why? He said he doesn't like the idea. He didn't like the idea that God rolled the dice. But if Jesus is the strong force and making the decisions for the universe, then is God playing dice? No, it means Jesus himself is making the decisions at a micro atomic level about everything, which is, you know, we like to say, and I think it's wrong for us to think this, that God is in control. Who's in control of the gay, of this world, and even to a degree of the creation? Satan. God, it tells us that over and over again.
Pastor had a beautiful picture of that in service.
Yeah.
God of the world, and it was a really freaky picture.
Satan is in control of the world. But at the very basis, who's really right? And it's not to say that Jesus is making decisions that are negative for humanity. You're too late then. Who's making all those negative decisions for humanity? It's humanity, right? That's the problem. We have free will. And free will is the soul. That's what the Greeks would say. Pneuma means you have free will. Anyway, these ideas that are encapsulated in what Jesus is telling us are really deep. That's the point I want you to get. You know, we shouldn't read them and just go, oh yeah, they'll stand forth into life, and the bad guys going into decision, into judgment, right?
To me, it just shows that really Jesus was curling the Pharisees' hair. I mean, like what Ann just said, like there's not a point of death. You are going to live through that bodily death, whatever. And if they must have understood all that. And I just feel like
they did understand it.
They're going through an apoplexy right now.
They understood it better than we did, right? It's like Nicodemus. I think Nicodemus was astounding, and looking back at Nicodemus was amazing to me, especially looking at it in the Greek, because we see Nicodemus being schooled by Jesus, literally schooled by Jesus. Jesus says, you are the smartest guy in Israel, and you don't understand this, right? That's almost a direct, paraphrase, quote. But he was schooled. It's like the nun smacking your hand with a ruler, right? And Jesus smacking his hand. And the same thing for us. What he's doing, we don't get this picture very well because we don't think this way. We have 2,000 years of thinking in the Greek worldview and in Christian Greek worldview. But yet, Jesus is the guy creating this worldview. It's a real worldview, but he's really pronouncing it to the people, right? And he's telling them, and they're absorbing it. Anyway, he goes on. By myself I can do nothing. I judge only as I hear, and my judgment is just, for I seek not to please myself, but him who sent me. We'll see parallels to this when we get to chapter 8. In any case, I can of my own self do nothing as I hear, I judge, and my judgment is just, because I seek not mine own will, but the will of the Father which has sent me. Let's see what it says in the Greek. Nor that not I have power, there's an ego. We never hardly saw that in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. And all of a sudden in John, we get egos everywhere. I love it. To make or do from or away of myself, no one or none, kathos, just as, according to which I hear, I will distinguish. And the krisis, the decision, he the of me, the diaka, just, dika, Diakosune, right? Diakosune, Dika, justice. This is also the, what's her name? Athena. She was the goddess of justice and the goddess of Athens. Judicial approval is that or because, no or not, I seek to worship or to plot. This word zito is really interesting. Worship or plot. To the thelema, determination, the amon of me, all the other things, contrariwise. The thelema, the determination of he having sent me from Santos. All right, let's see what this says. I do not have power to do for myself nothing. Now, this is a really cool and fun thing about Greek that we lost in the English. In Anglo-Saxon, you can say no, not, never, never, not, no. And it really means I really don't like no, right? And in some other languages, you can do the same thing. But for some reason in English, if you have two nots, it's a positive. And it's not. We're not Boolean. But in any case, I do not have power to do for myself nothing, anything. Just as I hear, I will distinguish. And my decision is just as judicial God's approval. Because I seek not to worship, and I left this in there, worship or to plot my determination, an act of will. Contrariwise, the determination and act of will of him having sent me. So, yeah, it doesn't really change the meaning all that much, but yet the way that it's presented is really interesting, especially when you look at, when we see the words in their contextual understanding. Instead of judgment, we see decision. Instead of will, determination. A determination is an act of will.
It's the same God is this, again, that he is God is his authority.
Yes, but he's also saying he's God. But that's the irony, right? But the thing that's interesting, and the thing I like about this, remember I've told you, there are like three wills, right? There's God's will, what he wants to happen. Will he get it? No, because he gave us free will, which was a bad idea, but hey, it's good for us, right? It makes us like God, right? We are in the image of God. That is the one will of God, and God's not going to get it. God really wants everybody to be saved, but it's not going to happen, right? There's another type of will. There is a will that is going to be what is, right? But there is also this other will, a decision, a determination. So when God makes a determination, he is making a decision, right? His decision may not come to fruition. God could make a decision. He could say, I'm deciding today that I'm going to especially bless Al. And yet, if Al doesn't do what it requires for God to bless him, is he going to get it? So God's want or desire is not done. God's ultimate will isn't done, right? It doesn't happen. And his decision or determination, it didn't come to fruition, not because of God. And I'm not picking on you out, but it could be anybody here, right? It's like I've said before. That's why I'm totally against this Calvinistic idea of determination, of fate. There's no fate in God's world. There's no fate. God may call us to all kinds of cool stuff, but if we don't aim for the mark or pick up the bow, you're never going to get it, right? And that's probably the greatest regret in human life. The greatest regret in human life, people say all the time, well, I wish when I was younger I did this. I wish when I was older I did this. My dad used to tell me all kinds of things. I'm trying to not live my dad's regrets. I'm trying to do the opposite and make happen those things which I want to happen in my own life, taking a hold of it, right, and doing those things. And so this is that point. There are three wills of God. And I think it's really important because we throw in the things like thelema, or we say, my own will. What kind of will? Right? What does that mean? When I look in the Greek, I know immediately what it means. When I look at decision as opposed to a judgment, I know immediately what that means. I understand these words. The other times, I'm not. What does it mean to have a judgment? Oh. Anyway, I think the Greek really gives us a really strong thing. Now they call it, they call it testimonies about Jesus, but we're still, this is the same crowd, right? We're still in the temple courts. We've still got the Pharisees, Sadducees, and other people, and they're standing around. And we did not have a change of venue of any kind, but it says, if I testify about myself, my testimony is not true. Okay, this is a continuing logos to telos. There is no, even though I left in what the NIV has, okay, just because I thought it was kind of fun to see that, but this is not a change. This is a continuing logos to telos. So, think about the Greek. Okay, remember, if I make a Greek argument, first, I give you my definitions, I give you my assumptions, and then what do? I provide you the logos, and the Greeks would say, I don't give you a conclusion. It's an unstated telos. So what did Jesus just give? He just gave us the logos. And now what is he going to do? He's going to put his proof down. This is where, in a paper, right, you guys wrote scientific, they made you write scientific papers even if you didn't want to, right? When you wrote your scientific papers in high school and maybe college, what did they make you do at the end? Well, your bibliography, right? Your proof, and you had to have your proof or your sources and your proof, right? This is the sources. This is the proof text. So we're going to hear this. If I testify of myself, my testimony is not true. Okay, let's see what that says in the Greek. Here's the King James. If I bear witness myself, my witness is not true. Here's what it says. In a case that I bear witness or testify metero, carried through all over, imatu of myself, the mater, the evidence given of me is not false. Elitus. We would translate that true, but it's not false. In the case that I bear witness all over of myself, my evidence given is not false. Not false. But in this case, it's not true, right? It's not true. Not false.
The ESV says, now it looks like they're inserting this to try to clarify that. It says, if I alone bear witness about myself, my testimony is not true. Is that sense in the Greek, or did they just decide to make an editorial decision?
They made an editorial decision. What's interesting about the Greek compared to the English translation we get, they use, this is very similar to NIV, if I bear witness, but the preposition used is peri. And peri is one, the problem with our prepositions, I do not like in general the way that we translate many of the prepositions. That's why when I translate them for you, I always use the same and the Greek meaning of the preposition. So peri means, peri here, what did they use? Let's see. You don't even see it, do you? Let's see. Peri, about. They used in the NIV, it's for peri, they used about, okay? In the King James, they used of. But the word is not about, and it's not of. It's through, all over. So in other words, it's an expansive sense. So it would be the opposite of alone, right? Instead, it means that his witness all through, all over, everything that he says and everything that he does. In this case, he says, if he bears witness of himself, then it's not true. And by the way, this is a satire and irony. Why is this a satire and irony? Can you get it? Well, that's true, but there's something else in there too.
What about the Jewish thing that you have to have a couple witnesses, you know, blah, blah, in court? Is that this kind of context?
Kind of, and you can plot. You need to apply that. That's good historical context. But there's something else going on here. What was the witnesses? What is the witness that happened before this?
John.
Well, even more. Other witnesses. The miracles. Yeah, he just did what? What did he just do? Yeah, the guy. Well, yeah, the other ones too. Well, we have the wine. We have the water and the wine. We have the kid that was healed. These are just the ones that were mentioned, right? We had other things. You know, obviously they knew about him going to Samaria because, we obviously know about him going to Samaria because they're going to call him a Samaritan later on, which is really interesting. That really had traction. But he just healed this guy, right? 40 years on a Shabbat and said, carry your mattress around. So what is witnessing to Christ? Yeah, they're seeing this. So this is an irony. This is a beautiful irony. In the case that I bear witness all over of myself, my evidence given is not false. It's not true. Right? In other words, if I say it, does it make it true? Well, what makes it true? Yeah, it's happening. You know, as a matter of fact, think about this. Okay, we don't get this picture, but think about this. Right beside him is standing the guy with the mattress. He's got a mattress on his head. He's got a mattress under his arm. He's got a mattress I don't know where he's got it. Maybe he's holding it like this and laying on it. Maybe he decided to lay down on the mattress. The guy with the mattress is right there. And Jesus is standing there and said, in the case that I bear witness all over of myself, my evidence given is not true. Do you see this? This is a beautiful Greek irony. Okay? There's another who testifies in my favor, and I know what his testimony about me is true. Okay? Now, we could probably get this. This is the continual logos that tells that there are that beareth witness of me, and I know that the witness which he witnesses of me is true. Other or another, it is estin, the martyrdom, he bearing witness or testifying, Harry, through all over, of me. And know that I stare at that, or because aletheus, not false, it is the martyria, the evidence given, which what he bears witness through all over of me. Okay, here it is in the proper sequence. Another is bearing witness all over of me, and I stare at that, not false. It is the evidence given which he bears witness all over of me. Tammy said you got to have two witnesses. Do I have two witnesses?
Just a few.
Yeah, everybody there is a witness. I've got multiple witnesses, and then Jesus says there's another witness. You have sent to John, and he has testified to the truth. Okay, remember, we take these little pieces out of context. When did they send to John? Do you remember?
That was way back when he was baptizing. You were talking about the water or something.
Way back in the 2nd chapter. What does it say? Who came to John? The Pharisees and the Sadducees came to John. It says so right there. It says, what's that?
The cleansing of the stuff. Weren't they talking about the cleanliness stuff?
Well, yeah, they were asking, who gives you the right to the mikvah, right? They came to John and asked him, what gives you the right to the mikvah, and who are you? Who are you really, right? And John testified. So Jesus says, you sent to John, and he's testified to the truth. This, like I said, we have got to not look at these as little piece parts. We've got to look at this in the context of the whole, of the whole document. Ye sent to John, and he bear witness unto the truth. Hymus of you have set apart apostolate forward to Ionan, and Mem Markaretin. He has borne witness and testified to thee not false. From among you have set apart for to John, and he is borne witness to the not false. This, like I said, I like to always give you the same translation for the same words. So the word, okay, does anybody recognize this apstelkate? Does anyone see a word in there?
Apostle.
Apostle. Yes. Apostle means to be set apart. It doesn't mean anything that we put context to it. It means to be set apart. And that's from among you have set apart for to John. That refers back to the 2nd chapter where they sent to John to ask John who he was and what was he doing. What's your authority? Okay? And what did John tell him? I am not. Well, John made some really interesting claims. I told you there are ironies. He said, I am not the voice crying in the wilderness, but he was. Jesus said he was. He says, I am not the Christ. He says that flat out, I am not the Christ. He specified that I was not. But he presumed he had the authority for the mikvah. He did it to precede the coming of the Christ. So, very specific. From among you have set apart for to John, and he is borne witness to the not false. By the way, the guys standing there beside him, we lose his picture. These guys standing there beside him are the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and they knew this. They sent to John. And obviously, what kind of report did they get back? Well, an honest report, right? And I mean, what purpose do you have in lying? That John told us this, and they see the guy standing beside Jesus, who Jesus healed. Jesus healed this guy, and that exactly precedes the point of John. John testified. He told them, not that I accept human now this is really beautiful. Not that I accept human this is an irony, but I mention it that you may be saved. Do you see this? Let's see if we can put this into the Greek context. But I received not testimony from man, but these things I say that you might be saved. Okay, so it says ego. Is there ego? I, a direct declaration. But I, nor not from anthro, man, face or human, the martyr, the evidence given, lambano. Lambano. Lambano does not mean to receive. I know we Lutherans like to think lambano means receive. It means in Greek to seize, to grasp hold of. I take hold of, other than contrariwise, these I make a logical argument in order that of you may be rescued or saved. Soteo. Okay, here we go. Here's a translation. But I do not take hold of the evidence given from a man. Contrariwise, I make a logical argument about these in order that you may be saved. Okay, do you see this? Okay, they sent to John. John told them about the testimony, right? They came back and told them. These guys are standing right here. And maybe some of the guys that went to talk to John are right there in the crowd, right there bugging Jesus. Beside Jesus is the man he healed. You see what Jesus is saying? He's slapping him. But I do not take hold of the evidence given from a man. Contrariwise, I make a logical argument about these in order that you may be saved. The healed guy is right there. John's still baptizing, right? He's still immersing. John doesn't matter. What's really amazing, though, is the testimony of John is that this is the Lamb of God. This is the Christ. And guess what he's doing? Precisely. I just think this is beautiful. Now, here's some really interesting stuff. This statement. John was a lamp that burned and gave light, and you chose for a time to enjoy his light. Okay, Jesus knows the minds of men, but why did they go to ask John? It's because they hoped. Remember what it says at the beginning of this whole John thing? Remember the beginning? Who is the light? Christ is the light. Now look what it says in the Greek. The Greek is beautiful. Here's the NIV, or the King James. He was a burning and shining light, and you were willing for a season to rejoice in his light. The kindness, that one there, was the likeness, a portable lamp. A portable lamp. He's setting on fire. Kamenos and Fiona, he lightened shining highness of you. But it's that you were willing or desiring to jump for joy forward to a time or period to a light or source of light of him. This is a very, very complex statement in Greek, although if we read it in Greek, we get the point. That one there was a portable lamp. The one setting on fire and the one lightening you. But forward to a period you were desiring to jump for joy into his source of light. Okay. First of all, I think it's really cool that Jesus says he is a portable light. Because remember at the beginning of John, who is the light? Jesus is the light, the permanent light, the light that never stops shining light, right? But a portable light, the word, likeness, a portable lamp. It's a lamp you carry around, right? There are other things you do with a lamp. Why do you have lamps in the ancient world? Anybody ever tried to light an ancient world lamp? You ever tried to read by it? Could you? Could you do anything with it? Why would you even have it? Huh?
See where you're going at night.
Really? You think?
Isn't it just a method to maintain the fire?
The reason for an ancient world lamp is to keep a fire burning. Because what did you want to do in the morning?
Eat your food.
You want to heat your food, you get warm. Exactly. You know, I don't know. Look, you guys been camping. You ever been in a log cabin without a fire? What happens when the dew falls in the morning and it's all over you? You ever been a Boy Scout or Girl Scout and you're out there in the tent and you wake up and you wipe the dew off of your sleeping bag in the tent? You know, the reason you made the fire, and by the way, Mama woke up real early. Mama made the fire. She heated up the inside so that when the people got up, the place was dry and warm and comfortable. And you had your coffee. No, they have coffee, tea, whatever. You know, you had something to drink. By the way, you know what the Japanese drank for years until they discovered tea? Hot water. Can't imagine a more. What did the Anglo-Saxons and the British drink in the morning? Before tea?
Beer. Ale.
Hot beer. Heated up beer, usually with a little barley bread on top and some cheese. Anyway, the portable lamp. Because you remember when we talked about the Torah? Remember the menorah? How big is that menorah? 60 pounds of gold? A menorah this big, about that big, with 7 lamps. And the lamps were used to light the sacrifice. Because could you see? No. Okay, I know. Go ahead and try it. Try it. Get yourself one of those little lamps, fill it with oil, light it up, and see what you can see. You can't even read your paperback book. Of course, you don't need paperback books. What are you going to see? Why would you even have one? Because you need a night light? Just saying. Where do you think they left it? In a niche. How much oil would it have in it? Enough to last through the night. And if it went out, okay,
Yeah,
Let's-
go to the market and get her. I mean, Jesus is gonna tell all about the parables of that, right? The brides
Yeah,
are
the
gonna level off,
Oh, yeah.
ran out of oil and those who didn't.
Let's talk about fire a little bit. I always love to talk about fire. To us, fire is a match away, right? Or maybe you flick your Bic, or maybe you got your better lighter, your Xantha lighter. You know, okay. To us, fire is ubiquitous and it's all over the place. If you read my book, The Second Mission, if the fire on the hearth went out, what did you have to do to replace it? You had to go to the Greek temple. If you lit a fire with a flint and steel, well, you didn't have steel, but flint and whatever, a couple of flint rocks, what could happen to you? They could execute you because the fire came from Zeus. Pure. The fire of Zeus. Pure is a fever. Pure is the fire of Zeus. Zeus provided fire because Zeus was a god of thunderstorms, basically, and lightning. Lightning was Zeus's thing. And by the way, by this period, whose fire were they using?
Zeus.
No.
The Greek.
What fire were the Greeks using by this time? Apollos. Huh?
The sun.
The sun god. Because how did they make their fire? Yeah, they would have a shield, a convex shield, and they would use the shield. This is the way they start the Olympian fire. You know that? In the Olympian fire, and because the reason they do this, because the Greeks did it way back. They would take a convex shield that was polished on the inside, and they would, and how they figured this out, they probably had a terrible accident, right? They probably somebody had a really polished shield and left it outside, and it was in the sunlight, and it just happened to go into the powder house, into something, and caught a fire, and it was, but it was the fire from Apollos. So because Zeus's fire was too hard to find or determine or whatever, right? Probably originally, they may have gotten fire originally from lightning, from a lightning type. Yeah, something like that. So yeah, but later on, when they discovered how to get it, the fire of the gods, right? Prometheus, remember Prometheus? Prometheus brought the fire of Zeus down to mankind. So they would light the fire from that concave thing, and they would do it once a year. Where? In the hearth of Hestia. Yeah, Hestia is the great goddess Hestia. Hestia is the goddess of the hearth, the goddess of the greatest libations. Every first libation in Greek. Matter of fact, I'll tell you a little bit about history. Here's a little thing about history. The less you hear about a historical figure, the more or how important is that figure? They're more important because this is a problem with historical stuff. The stuff that's really, really important usually doesn't get written down because everybody knows it. The stuff that's not important doesn't get written down because it's not important, right? The stuff that gets written down in history tends to be, what's that?
The unusual, maybe?
Well, the unusual, the middle ground, the stuff that's kind of, if you look at our prayer books, our hymnals, you could never reproduce our service unless you had a video of it, right? You can't read it because it leaves out certain important things. Now, there are some explanatory guides that guide a pastor in how to do the services, but we don't get that. We get the abbreviated version, right? So if you were just to take our abbreviated version, you could never reproduce the whole thing. The most important stuff is left out, and the least important stuff is left out, and we get the middle ground things. Hestia was literally the most important goddess of the, matter of fact, Hestia was a Titan. Did you know that? She was a Titan. She was not born of the Titans. She was herself a Titan. Zeus was a son of a Titan. Remember that? Okay, I know. This is stuff that we were taught way back in junior high school and high school, but we forgot it all, right? But this is really, and I know when we heard it, we probably said, This isn't important.
How am I ever going to use this?
How am I ever going to use this, right?
Never gonna hear this again.
And someone's got to see back then, which means you're supposed to be average and know everything, right? But whatever. This stuff is really important because it relates directly in the Gospels. Everybody there knew this stuff. But what I'm saying is Hestia, the hearth fire at Hestia, before the Olympic ceremony or before the New Year, the Greek New Year, I don't remember when it was, but the Greek New Year, they would put out every fire in Greece, every fire. And then they would light the fire at Olympus. And what would happen? They would light it at the hearth of Hestia, and then they would light the things from that hearth, the torches, and where would they go? To all the temples. Every temple in Greece, they would carry the torch and they would light the hearth to Hestia in the temple. And then the people would come and they would get the fire and take it home. So if your fire went out, you would light the fire from the temple. And also we believe that we think that the Jews may have done something similar. Yes, ma'am.
Two things. One, what happened if they put out all the fires and then it was raining for a week or the New Year? Would they be in trouble? The second one was like you just said, that this idea is not unfamiliar to the Jews either, because the fire of the temple was sacred and it was from God. And even when Aaron's sons went and they took a different fire and then they died because of it.
Yes. Fire in the ancient world was a critical thing.
Well, I'm just saying, fire is important enough that it's still incorporated into our worship to this very day. We don't use artificial fire lights on our candles. We could, but we don't. We use the real fire brought out from the acolytes, and on Christmas Eve it's spread into the people.
And we have the eternal light.
And we have the eternal
You
light
notice we
that
have the
never
eternal.
goes out.
Does the eternal light ever go out?
No.
Not when anybody's watching.
Well, what? Yeah, not when anybody's watching. That's good. What does that eternal light reflect? What was that? What does that eternal light reflect?
The light of Christ never goes out.
No, even deeper than that. The Torah light in the temple. The temple light, the menorahs never went out. As a matter, do you guys see a little problem here? The Greeks believed that once a year you were supposed to put out all the fires. The Hebrews believed what? You had to keep it burning. So do you see a cultural problem here? And by the way, that little cultural problem, why do you think that we as Christians hide the light of Christ, the eternal candle, at his crucifixion, except that one? And you know what? I know it's become part of our religious, ceremonies. But where do you think that came from? It probably came from, in the Roman world, what did the Romans do? Whatever the Greeks did, right? What did the Greeks do? What they'd always done. So if you're a Christian and you got to keep the light of Christ going, what? You got to hide it. Exactly. And remember what Jesus said? Don't hide your light under a bushel. Oh, man. They're even more difficult here. But the thing is that if you look back, all of our things that we do, they're not new ideas. They're not stuff that we just made up. They're not things that Christianity said, oh, we're going to do this, right? They come directly from the historical things that, especially those things that we would call adiaphora, right? Adiaphora. Do we need to have lights or candles or anything like that? No. We do it because we've been doing it for 2,000 years, and it's really cool
It has
stuff.
meaning. We don't always know what they all are. But
They're physical representations of spiritual truths, and
it occurs to me that eternal light and putting out the other lights is kind of like what Jesus is saying here. Like when somebody dies, it looks like they die, like the light has gone out, but
Right.
there's actually that eternal light that lasts, that doesn't go out.
I think it's really cool that he says, John, has a lycnos. He's a portable lamp. And the portable lamp, why do you have a portable lamp? It's not for lighting your way.
To go
Take
light
fire from
others.
one
To
place
go
to
get
another.
it.
Yeah.
And bring it.
It's to take, and remember, he says it. Look what he says. And there was a portable light, the one setting on fire, the one lightening you. But for it to appear, you were designed to jump for joy into his source of light. Okay, why do you jump for joy for a source of light? Why? Think about this. Think about this. Why would you jump for joy for a source of light?
You're gonna keep warm.
Yeah, if we would die without it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, warmth, food. I can cook a steak. I can do a grill, right? I can grill a steak if I got a fire. So you would jump for joy. I think this is really cool. You're willing to rejoice. Okay, rejoice. Means about the same as jump for joy. But I just love that, jump for joy. Because it's the epithumia, the scent of the sacrifice. The portable light allows me to light the sacrifice. And the sacrifice to a Greek is food. It's going to the steakhouse. It's going to eat your pork. It's going to Yoder Meats, right? And getting the brats, right? We're talking about a very important thing to every human being. And all your children are jumping for joy because guess what? We're going to have brats. Just saying. But just to get this Greek irony points to the one purpose of the ancient world is not just for illumination, not for illumination hardly at all. Anyway, we're running out of time. Thank you, Lord, for this day. We pray you look at this week and we pray. Help us be portable lamps, right?
I think it's probably more important than just jumping for joy because you get to cook a steak. I think it's because fire sustains life.
Yeah, you won't
Right,
die.
survival.
That's right.
Yeah.